Good morning. So this is our first week of watercolor. I went swimming, not really, but it's Sunday morning for me. I want to record these videos for the week. Since this is our first week of hybrid, it's going to be kind of weird that when you come to school, I'm going to have some different stuff for you to do. We can't really do watercolor at school. We only have 40-minute sessions. It's not really enough time to get things out, but I am going to be giving you some choice things. So make sure to bring your drawing supplies. But we're talking about watercolor this week. So I'm going to share my screen really quick, and I'm going to talk to you about the things that you need to bring with you, or need to have. Sorry, not bring with you, because you can't do watercolor at school. So let me make this big. So I pulled out some things. These are things you should have. You should have picked up your paint set. It came with this brush, which is very flimsy. I like a little stiffer bristle brush, which you're welcome to use, but I'm using what you guys have. So if this is all you have, then you can do what I'm doing. Okay, so you should have this brush, and you should have been given this extra brush. This is what I call the fluffy brush, and mine hasn't been used yet, so it's a little stiff. So run your fingers through it, get rid of the stiffness. But this is a good brush to get water down in your paper and get lots of paint down in your paper. I like this brush. I call it the fluffy brush. Okay, so you need 2 cups for water. One of them is to clean your brush when you use it, and this one is to add water to this area. This tray is meant, this lid is meant to be your tray to mix paints. I'm going to say this several times. Do not leave standing water in these little paint pots. If you leave standing water in these little paint pots, then it's going to get gooey and gross, and your paints are not going to dry well, and it's going to be sick. But when you mix color in here, guess what? You can just let it dry and close your lid, and then you can just add a drop of water and start mixing those paints again. And so I tend to do that. We're gonna work with salt. I have some kosher salt in here. It is not regular Morton salt. Regular Morton salt, like just the regular plain salt, works the best, but I don't have that at home. I also have a little bit of Himalayan pink fine salt, so I'm going to try both of those. So we're going to do salt technique. We're also going to talk about playing with borders, and we're going to talk about the pastel technique. So I have 4 pastel colors here to try today. White just for borders, but yellow, orange, and green. This is a green one. And then I pulled out a white and black crayon, and we're going to talk about borders because some of you may not have masking tape, but I will let you know this right now, that when you come to school, if you need some masking tape, if you don't have access to masking tape, I can send you home with a roll so you can do what I do. You also have your mixed media book that was, that little sketchbook that you guys picked up from school. And I will say that I've done some watercolor. That was a sample, somebody else's. Let's see here. I did my first watercolor flowers in this sketchbook, the multimedia sketchbook. And as you can see, I did tape off the edges. That's how they're so nice and crisp and clear. But if you don't have tape, guess what? You can use some crayon or pastel to make a border, or you don't have to have a border at all. But this paper works. It's not the best. When you come to school, I have some really nice watercolor paper cut up for us for your use. Let me move this out a little bit. Okay, and I tried some flowers. This is this is something called dry on, or wet on dry, wet paint on dry surface. So we're going to do wet on dry today. We're also going to do wet on wet. My background is a wet on wet in these flowers. Okay, so you're going to do a fine layer of water, then add paint. We're going to talk about that. That's how I did the background for these as well. You will eventually learn this technique called lifting. That's how you make the clouds. I call it paper towel clouds, but that's called lifting. We're not going to do that today. Okay, something else. Have a nice space for you to do watercolor. Maybe you only have a small space. Maybe you only have the kitchen table. I will say this right now. You can get newspaper, have something to put down underneath your watercolors, just in case you make a big mess. Watercolor is really nice, those you can clean up very nicely, but at school, definitely, we lay down newspaper over our desks before we paint. Okay, I'm wondering if I can pause this. Can I pause? I'm gonna pause. Okay, hopefully I am recording again. Let's see what happens. So I have taken some masking tape, just plain old masking tape, and I've made a border on my sheet, and I've done 4 little panels so that I can try some different stuff. So, gosh, I sure hope I'm recording. Let me stop share. I bet you I am. Pause, stop recording. Okay, so I am. Let's share again. I hope this is working. I don't want to have to do this again. Okay, here we go. So again, I've taped this off. Now, if you have a white or black crayon, there's probably no reason at all. I'm just going to say that water and crayon, and I'm going to fold this under on this page, this tape, so it's not sticking to everything. Now, eventually I will be pulling off this tape when it dries. Wait till your paint dries, then you'll be pulling it off very delicately. Otherwise, it will rip your paper and grab your paper, but we'll talk about that in a few. So I don't see any reason that you couldn't take a white crayon, but then you can't see your border. So if you want to try purple or blue or black or whatever, I think that works great. I know we also use pastels. So paint is not going to adhere to the pastels, so that would make a great border. But I'm going to go back here and just talk about wet on dry, mixing paints, wet on wet, and salt. Okay, so, and I'll come back to the pastels because I'm definitely going to be using the pastels for one of the demos. Okay, so first things first, let's talk about wet on wet and mixing our paint. So I'm going to get some water in here. This is a great brush for getting water. So this is going to be my clean water. This one will be my rinse water. Okay. And I'm just going to start with the big space. Sure, why not? And I tend to use a lot of blues. So I'm going to mix blue in here. I want to get a good amount of water in there. I know you can't, can you see my bubble if I turn it? I should probably be, I'm going to pause again. Pause. Hopefully it's not recording that whole time. Close the curtain. Okay, I closed the curtains. So now you can see that there's a water bubble in here. Let me even get some more. Okay, now I'm going to come over here to my blue. I'm going to swirl around my brush. Now I'm making sure that I don't leave a big old puddle of water in that blue. But I'm using the water in here to get some blue. Ooh. Do. Love me some blue. Okay, I need more water. Remember, this is my rinse cup, but I'm going to grab more water from it and I'm going to rinse this out a little bit and I'm going to get this blue going. And I'm going to do what's called a wet on wet. Okay, so I'm going to clean out this brush. I'm just swiping it back and forth on the bottom of that cup. Give me some clean water. And I'm going to just do a light wash across here. And what happens when you do that is that your paint will light wash across. Okay. Wet on wet. That is called wet on wet. Okay. Now clean out my brush. I'm going to get me a little purple. And I believe this is purple. It looks really super dark, but I bet you this is the purple. And I'm gonna dab it in here, give it its own square. And then if I go like this, ooh, look what what happens. That is called wet on wet. Okay, and you can play around and get different techniques with that. See what it does. Because that's your job this week, is to play with these techniques. Okay. Making sure to prevent water from building up in here. If I had extra water, which I don't, it's pretty dry, I could scrape it off into here. Okay, this is my paint mixing station. These are just where you're grabbing the color from. Okay, I'm going to rinse my brush. That is wet on wet. All right. I did a little bit of light water, just got it wet a little bit, added a little wet blue, and then I took some nice deep pigmented color and swiped it through there. And you can see that it's still running because that is wet. All right. If I had a crayon border, I bet you it would be okay as well. Okay, so let's talk about the pastels because, well, we could do another wet on wet and we could try salt. Let's do wet on wet and try salt. So again, I'm gonna clean out that brush, swiping back and forth. I'm gonna get some clean water. I'm gonna do another light pass with the water. Okay, and I'm gonna just try that technique again and we're gonna play with salt. Okay, got a little bit of light blue all over that. Clean my brush. Get a little more purple because I just like purple. And it's nice, deep and pigmented because I don't have a lot of, I didn't put water in the tray first. So it's nice and pigmented. Okay, so let's do some little squiggles here. And then I'm going to lay my brush down and I'm going to try the different salt and see what happens. Now, salt tends to, I always like to put a little bit of it in my hand and then I like to sprinkle. Can you see what's happening? The salt sucks up that color. Now, after your paint dries, then you kind of brush off the salt. So try not to brush salt off on everything. But salt is really cool with this wet on wet. Now, you're not going to see the technique if your paper is dry. It needs to be wet on wet. It needs to be real wet. But notice it sucked up that purple. Okay, that is salt. And I tried one kind of salt. I think I will try another kind of salt. I'm going to put this back in this little container. I want to try the Himalayan salt as well. Okay, that is the salt technique. You got to have wet on wet to have salt. All right. And I didn't have to have the purple. I could have just added salt to my background. Maybe I wanted to make a deeper blue. In fact, I'm going to wash this brush and I'm going to get a little bit deeper blue going on there. I'm going to add more pigment, more paint to this because I want it to have a deeper blue. Okay, so now I'm going to try that one more time and I'm going to do a different salt. Okay, so let me clean my brush. Get some fresh water, do a little light back and forth. Okay, I'm going to go over here and get this deeper blue now. And you know, when you're using this notebook, you can always lift it up and let your colors run. Watch what this is doing. Give some cool effects. So play with your paint. That is your job. That is your job. Eventually, we are going to be make travel posters, and you're going to have to use so many different techniques. So you get to try some new stuff. Okay. And then I'm going to do my purple again just because it's sitting here. And yes, I didn't wash my brush, but blue and purple are good. And then I'm going to, let's see, what am I going to do? Do more of an Essie snake. And then I want to try the Himalayan salt. So then get the cork off. And I always put a little bit in my hand. It's been sitting there a while. I have another container that I actually sprinkle the salt with. Okay, got a little bit of it in my hand. And let's see what happens over here. Ooh, definitely sucks up the wetness. And then, like I said, once this really dries and you let me put a little Himalayan salt on this one where it's wet. Once it dries and you flake off the salt, you end up with these cool effects. Ooh, I'm going to add it to that one too, because that's just the way I roll. Okay, remember, this is practice. You're not ruining anything. Don't be hard on yourself. Once you come over to the school, I'll send you home with some better watercolor paper, some thicker paper, so that you have some more stuff to work with. And you just get to experiment. Again, you're playing with the techniques to figure out what different tools do so that you can make a travel poster when we get done with all these techniques. There are actually 12 techniques that I do, but some of them you may not have the materials like rubber cement. So I'm not expecting you to do that, but let's see. Here we go. I'm going to draw a little picture. Pastels and watercolors are pretty cool. And so I'm going to show you, I'm going to clean out this brush so it's not just sitting there drying. Clean out. And then just let it lay there. Okay, so I'm going to draw a little sunshine scene because that's what I do. That's what I do. So I'm going to put, I always like the sun on this side. So I'm going to add my little sunshine, and hopefully I'm not going to knock my water over shaking on the screen. Okay. And it's not going to be fabulous, and no one expects it to be. This is my creative art, and really just to show you how pastels can work for you. And pastels are cool too because they can mix. So maybe, or they blend really nicely. So maybe I want to give my son a little blending. Okay, so I got those. I'm going to do some little bit of grass here. Your grass can be different. You can do trees, you decide. Remember, I'm just doing a quick demo for you so you can see the fun stuff that crayon and pastels and watercolors do. So I'm going to get me black because I need some water. I'm going to put water down in here, and I'm going to get black. Yes, I'm going to get black. And this is dry, just so you know, this is the dry, wet on dry, which I'm putting wet paint on dry surface. Ooh, look how nice and black that is. I want a nice pigmented black. Remember, no water, standing water, no standing water in your little paint pots. You mix it here, get it out of this. Okay, here we go. Ah, this is so satisfying. Look at it. It doesn't adhere to the pastels. I love that. That's why I think the pastels will work great for a border and if you don't have tape. Ooh, that is lovely. I love that. Now, if you had alcohol works really great too. I did not bring that technique with me. That was not the plan for today. So the techniques I want you to play with are wet on wet. Everybody should have some salt. Hopefully you have salt somewhere. Try salt technique. Pastels or crayons. If I draw this with crayons, crayons should have the same effect. And then try this technique. So this is dry, wet on dry, wet paint on a dry surface. These, I had a little layer of water and then I added the paint. Let's see if I had something else I wanted you to practice. And then of course I will introduce more for the rest of the week. Play with, let's see, I got wet on wet, salt, crayon, pastel, and wet on dry. Yeah. Okay. So, and I talked about having 2 cups of water, super important. Always wash your brush. Okay. And I just swipe it across the bottom. I know you can't see here. I'm just swiping it across the bottom. Look at that nasty water now. You guess what? You go get some new water. I'm swiping it across the bottom of my cup. And then I'm cleaning it and I'm going to wipe it there. Now I just let these dry. And then guess what? I can start again with my blues. And then you can always go and rinse this part out. This will even pop out if you want to wash this case. Okay. This will pop out in and out. And these are refillable. So please don't throw this away. I do have refillables for these. So talk to me about that. If you're using one of your colors a lot and you need another one, you just come and ask me. Okay, I'm gonna stop share and say that is the first thing that we're working on, right? So I'm gonna record the next one for the end of the week. And then when you come to school, just bring your drawing supplies or your iPad charge. So if it's really nice, we'll go take photos. Okay, bye you guys.